Hello and welcome to Muse Jam Session recording 201. My name is Dani Beaumont.
Hello and welcome to
and I need to
Muse
fix
Jam
that
Session
sound problem.
recording
1 second. Hold on.
200.
Okay. I am Principal Product Manager on the Adobe Muse team, and I'm excited to be with you here today. Muse 101. This is a great session. We get to slow things down and talk about the application. I've mentioned it in some of my recent jam sessions, but I volunteered probably 2 months ago to work with a local design studio. Adobe here in San Francisco helps to fund something called the Minnesota Street Project by setting up a studio there and working with local artists. And I was asked to work with those artists to build out some portfolio websites. So I said, sure. And I did a 90-minute workshop with these visual designers mostly. Well, I would say actually artists. So they do actual tactile work, beautiful, beautiful work, painting, construction, furniture, photography, things of that sort. And I thought I would sit down for about 90 minutes and teach them how to use Muse, and then they'd be off on their way. And what I was reminded about is that there's a couple layers here. I think that Muse takes a while to understand. It really has grown over the past 5 years to be more of a pro tool and less of a out-of-the-box intuitive tool that you can just guess at and get through it without reading anything or learning anything about the tool. The other thing that makes it quite hard, to be honest, is the web is a complex place. When I started my career a long time ago, we did not have web designers. We did not have interface designers. You'd ask the visual designer that produced a brochure for you if they could stop and maybe make a couple icons or help with a user interface. But it wasn't a dedicated career. And to that same end, I think web design has really evolved into its own space. So if you're new to Muse, if you're excited about the idea of building out a visual design website without having to write code, you're definitely in the right place. But I think you need to be patient and put some time into learning a few things. One is best practices around the web. How do you come up with navigation on a site? How can you make sure there's a paradigm that the viewer of your site will understand when they're jumping into that experience? Websites are stories, they're spaces, they're full-on experiences, and that doesn't happen by accident. Visual designers spend a lot of time to think through that mental metaphor. The other thing I have to say is, as of last year in February, Muse delivered responsive design, which means that as you build out a website, you can design everything from the largest desktop device to a very small smartphone device and make sure that that experience is always terrific, no matter where you are in between that real spectrum of devices. That means that your job is more complicated. When you go to design within Muse, in my opinion, to have a successful experience, if you're going to build out a responsive site, you need to really think through for every single element on the site, how will it occur? How will it stack? How will it be organized across all of that variety of devices? And that means it's a lot of mental or physical work around that. So in this hour, I'm going to pretty much build out, hopefully we'll get all the way to a full website. I'm going to stop and see real quick here if this is showing up on my Facebook Live. I'm back in the office today. There we go. I'm back in the office today, so I don't have some of my usual equipment, including my usual microphone. So sorry if the sound is not as terrific. I'm going to bring up the comments as we go along. I am on my own today, so I'm going to try to stop in and keep an eye on those comments as they occur. I think there's a way. Yeah, I'm still getting used to this Facebook Live experience. But I will stop from time to time. Go ahead and throw your comments in and see if I can answer them as we go along. So in the spirit of Muse 101, how do you learn about the tool? Where is their content available? The Muse team we're known as a scrappy team here at Adobe. And we pretty much, some of us, when the tool was first built, was staffed by people that have been at Adobe a long, long time. And as such, we really believe in some of the old-fashioned values of Adobe, which is really teaching your tool well, and having a good relationship with your community. So we, in our scrappy way, built out our own website using Muse originally. We now use actually Shopify in the back end of our site to maintain all of the content that is there. But it's a great resource for you if you're new to Muse. And I encourage you to go to basically muse.adobe.com. So it's a subdomain of Adobe's, and it has all sorts of learn and help content that's here. So one great truth, we just redesigned everything but the landing page on this site. So if I jump over to the tutorials page, we have a new design. Kudos to Ollie Pordelli of cookie.com for the graphic in the header area of this website. He had done some illustrations for some tutorials for us some time back, and I love this one and used it in the header area. But one great place to go, because this is fresh and accurate, is the footer area of this website. If you have questions, there is a community of folks that have been using Muse for a long, long time on the forums. If you're a little lean forward and you want to affect the future of Muse, there's a link there for you to join our private pre-release program and give us feedback. You need to play with some of our beta builds, which is something you'll notice in my world here. If I roll over my dock, you'll notice I have Muse and I have a beta version of Muse running on my machine. So I'm able to still do production work with the shipping version of Muse, but I have that beta version that I can play with and give feedback to our team. And I encourage you to do that as well. There's also a link to contact customer care if you're stuck. We're working really hard to answer all of the questions that come up in the forums and get that response rate up as much as possible. I'm actually going to be heading out to India next month, about a month from now, and I'm going to spend one day just working with our support folks. So up in Delhi, in the Delhi area, the people that are on all of our support for Muse, and just train them up and make sure they have some of the same information that I know about the tool. So I encourage you to leverage those things. Here on the site, there is a number of navigation, the tutorials page. So this is a great place to find all sorts of tutorials. One thing I just completed actually about 4 months ago, if you happen to have a LinkedIn or a lynda.com account with your company or on your own, this is a very fresh training. It's about 5 hours and 50 minutes long, so it's not short, but it takes you through everything around responsive design for Muse from the beginning to the end. So the LinkedIn community is a different one than the Creative Cloud or the Adobe community, so we really wanted to develop that content and put it out there. If you don't have access, you can sign up for free for a week, I think, or a month. But you can also leverage another tutorial that's free and available, and it's this tile that's here, how to create a responsive website in Muse. This is more about 65 minutes, and it takes you through the basics around building out the site. So I encourage you, if you watch this session and want to go over it again, go ahead and download the assets with that responsive website building tool and take it step by step there. It'll cover some of the same material a little bit more slowly. Other places that are terrific to come is events like the one you're attending now. So you may be on Facebook Live, or you may have found this on the Facebook events area, but there's lots of recordings that are here. As I mentioned, this is Muse recording 201, which means I've been doing this an awful lot. But there's about 24 topics that I do rotate through. You're welcome to jump onto the YouTube channel, which is linked here in the Watch Now button, and just skim to the parts that are good, which means I should probably get going. I'm 10 minutes into this training. But go ahead and check that out on YouTube, or Facebook Live has some past recordings as well in the Facebook videos area. So all great ways to get involved. If you've been using Muse for a while, there's a basic premise around Muse, which is its extensibility. And that is reflected on our widget directory page. So in a nutshell, we have a lot of dialogue around this. People say, why do I have to go buy a widget from the community? And there's been some real conversations in the forums about this lately. What I would say in a very brief nutshell is that Muse is a web design tool. And the web, unlike PostScript or PDF, for example, is not a language that Adobe owns. We do not have control over its format. The web is an open standard, and that's why things move so quickly with the web. Things like HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, these are all extensible ways that you can grow your capabilities within Muse. But it would be very hard for the core Muse team to cover up so many different avenues about the web as they evolve. So the widget directory is just a place to come. We make no money off of this, but there's over 1,200 different ways of extending the Muse application. If you come to the filter dropdown, you can just start with the free set. But as you work with Muse, if you say to yourself, heck, I want to be able to add a blog to my website. I want to add a shopping cart to the website. I want to just play a video or play some audio files on the site. There's quite often a widget for that. And that widget allows you to take arbitrary HTML, basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript from the outside world and place it inside your Muse file. And we'll look at that a little bit today in this session as soon as I jump in. The other thing I do want to say is if you've built out a site that you think we'd be interested in, please submit it to Site of the Day. There's this lovely big green button here. The cool part of Site of the Day is we've just refreshed it. So you have the ability to look at work that other people have done in the community that we've selected. For any of our past Site of the Day submissions, you can now actually look at the thumbnail previews that was showcased for that site in the past. Another thing that's awfully terrific is if you're interested per country at sites that are showcased, if you just come up in the search field here and type the word Germany, you can bring up all of the sites that have been submitted from Germany, for example. So there's some nice categorization here. You can also filter by topic. If you're looking to build out a cooking website, a food website, for example, food and nutrition, you can go to that category and sort within the database to those files. All right, enough of all that talk. I do have a chunk of time here, and I do want to talk about the basics for building out the site. But rather than make it up and start from scratch, I am going to build towards a site that I have in a finished form. It's a demo asset that we're looking to release in a couple months as part of our starter correction. And actually, before I get too much further than that, I do want to mention, if you come to the tutorials page and you scroll down a bit on that page, there's a section called Starter Designs. And this is a set of about 5 templates, of which 2 have been converted to responsive design templates. But it's a full template that you can download and customize if that's an easier way for you to get started with Muse. If you click on the Preview Help button for each of those templates, what we have is a whole series of tooltip videos. So if you want to understand how to work with color swatches, you can click this link and it's going to load up a quick little video that tells you how to customize the color swatches on this particular template that we have here. If you have feedback about these starter files as a new user, please send it to us. As I mentioned, we're kind of refreshing those in the next few months, and it's a good time to let us know what works there and doesn't work. You can send that to me. Don't spam me, but I'm Dani@adobe.com, or just put it in the forum or put it into the private pre-release. We'd like to hear it. Or comments in Facebook. They're all good. I do review most all of that as much as I can. Okay, enough fun. So let's talk about the finished site that we're working towards. It's summer here in San Francisco, kind of. I realized that I've lived in San Francisco about 25 years, and I'm always shocked when summer, quote unquote, happens, because it becomes cold and windy as the mainland of America heats up and the fog rakes across San Francisco on its way east. So we're kind of having our cold summer at the moment, not a lot of picnics going on. But in spirit of summer picnics, this site is, as I mentioned, it's an asset that we're going to release pretty soon. And it's geared towards corporate environments. Let's say you work for a large company and you're responsible for promoting something like a company picnic. This is an example of how you could put together a really quick site that just covers over simple topics. So in the site, let me just kind of explain a little bit of what's going on. I have navigation here up towards the top. In the main area, I have an example of a widget. Here's a countdown widget that came from one of the widget providers, 123 Muse. There are some other countdown widgets in the widgets directory. You have the ability to add it to your calendar, so you can save the date in essence. If I jump to some of the other pages, again, this is very simple. Details about the event, a link that allows you to go over to the RSVP page. Looks like that link's broken. I got to go fix it. Another example of a widget is probably one of the most simple, simply a mapping widget. So this shows the location for the event. In a map, I can come in and access driving directions. If I'm on my phone, I can get those directions using Google Maps, for example. And then in the RSVP section, I have another widget, which is a contact form widget. Now, as I mentioned, this entire site is optimized to look terrific from everything desktop all the way down to smartphone. And I can see that by dragging the edge of the browser to see how the content is adjusting based on the device I'm working on. So if I jump over to the map page, for example, the map that's there is going to scale or adjust based on a particular device. Notice the navigation up towards the top here. As I get to a certain spot, roughly around when tablet devices would kick in, the navigation changes from something I might click with a mouse to something I might use my finger to actually click on and access some of those additional pages. So more touch enabled as I get to tablet class of devices all the way down to a phone device, smartphone here. So as you work, I feel like there's a couple things you just need to do as you're getting started. For me, I find some things overwhelming. I can get dyslexic with phone numbers. I also can get overwhelmed with responsive websites. Trying to think about every single element and how I'm going to handle the navigation, how I'm going to handle the logo does overwhelm me at times. I use a screen capture tool all the time now, and I just upgraded it. Here's a little plug for Snagit on the Mac. But they've done a really terrific job in their latest version of allowing you to capture content for websites. So I have Snagit running here, and when you snag content, you can come in and just save it into a library and then tag it. So one of the things I did, if I were to build this site from scratch, one thing I mentally want to think through, either sketch it out on paper or look at examples, is how each of those content elements are going to be handled across the three major classes of devices. So how do I handle my layout for desktop, tablet, and smartphone? And Snagit's got a sweet little feature where it'll capture what they call a scrolling scrolling screen capture. And that means that for each page, I can come in, I'm going to hit the space bar here. This is the landing page of the site, and I can see all of my elements. If I jump to the next screenshot that I took, it jumps to the tablet. So I'm going to go back out. Notice the navigation on the top jumps to what's known as a hamburger menu, or kind of like a hamburger. If you click it, it expands. And if I jump to the next screenshot that I took, it's the smartphone version. So I'm going to keep going through each page. I think that whether you hit a whiteboard with this or you take screen captures of other sites that you've seen and you like the way it's handled, really thinking through your layout from desktop, notice the squares of images that are here in the middle area. When I jump to tablet, it's a little subtle, but the height of those squares is not changing. It's adjusting its width. So they're becoming more narrow. And then as I come to the phone layout, I can see the full page. What happens, I'm going to jump back again just to show this. Notice that the layout is going from 2 columns to 1 column for the text. The images are going to 2 across as tiles to adjust there. In my map, it's pretty simple. Everything's centered. The map is in the center. The text is in the center. So as I jump to the tablet, I just need to accommodate my navigation change, that menu change, and then my individual page where everything's stacked and more narrow. I'm going to jump up to the contact form now. So here I am on the desktop layout of that contact form. I can see all of its content. It's a 2-column structure. If I jump to tablet, it's still 2-column. Notice it's getting a little more crowded there with that contact form. And as I jump to the third layout, everything's stacked on top of itself. There's a methodology around responsive design known as card design or tile design. It makes your design life very easy. So as we go back to this contact form, notice in the tablet I've got 2 columns in essence. If I jump to the phone, I still have two columns. They're just stacked one on top of another. So I didn't have to come through and rework that contact form for every single breakpoint or every single device. I just adjust those cards appropriately. Okay, with that up front, I'm gonna now just kind of get started. So let's jump into the Muse application. I'm gonna swing out of here and keep an eye on the Altura design just to remind myself of the site structure. So as I jump into Muse, the first decision I need to make is, do I want to have a fixed width site, something that's not responsive? I can still rely on something known as alternate layouts. You can read about it if you'd like, but alternate layouts dealt with the world back when we could differentiate between a smartphone, a tablet, and a desktop device. I have an iPhone 7, and this thing right now is a phone, but if you do this, it's a tablet. So that is considered a tablet, and that's considered a phone. Because there are so many, many different devices that are out there, we can't really keep up any longer. So alternate layouts can be useful in some instances. Some people use them in combination with responsive sites. But in the world of responsive, I can have what's known as fluid breakpoints, where things flow in a breakpoint, or fixed breakpoints. And just to kind of jump off to maybe one other page we didn't go to, is if you click on the Resources tab on the microsite, there's a section for Muse templates and widgets. I'll tell you a secret, even if you don't buy the templates that are there are some terrific learning moments in the templates that are provided. So for example, Muse Themes uses interesting breakpoints in their design. They usually will define fixed breakpoints for everything from desktop all the way through tablet, and then their smallest breakpoint is a fluid breakpoint. And if you want to buy one of their templates and download it, just to kind of look at how they're going through that structure. I'm going to go ahead and follow what this site has already, and that is going to be a fluid breakpoint responsive site. So I'm here in Muse, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the New button, or pull that on File to New. And notice that I have options here. I'm presented with the ability to define either a fluid width or fixed width site. As I mentioned, fixed width, it's not going to flow within the breakpoint. You can add multiple breakpoints to make sure your content stays in view, but it's a different approach than that fluid width. My phone is very busy right now. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and start with fluid width, and we'll go ahead and start at about 1200 pixels in width. There are guidelines that are out there around what the largest breakpoint should be. Some go with 1400, some go with 1200. When you define that, you have the ability to also define infinite width for elements like your header, so you don't have to worry too much about it. I find that 1200, 1400 is about the max. Even if someone has a much larger monitor, they're not going to want to be reading to the left and the right. So making sure your web content stops at about 1400, I think, is a good practice. If you like to work with a grid structure, so check out 960.gs, 960 grid system. That teaches you how you can have a 12-column or 16-column grid and have a real orderly design that's very easy to break into tiles or cards as you jump to the smaller breakpoints. I'm going to go ahead and keep my column at 1, stick with 1200, and click OK. And Muse now takes me into one of 4 different workspace layouts. And I can see where I am by looking here on the upper right-hand corner. I'm currently in the site plan mode. This is very handy as you're planning out your site, working with a client, or thinking through on your own how you're going to organize your content. So by default, I have a master page. See if I can move this nice little video here a little bit, let it be. But I have a nice master page, and that master page, you'll notice here, a master, is being used by the home page. That's terrific. I'm going to go back to my live site just as a point of reference and take a look at what we got going on here. So if I click on Altura, it takes me to index.html. One of the rules behind Muse is you have to always have that first page in the upper left-hand corner. It needs to be index.html. We assign it in that way. I think it's a legacy thing having to do with hosting on Business Catalyst, a hosting platform we were more tightly coupled with. But that's kind of a hard, fast rule. If I go to the other pages, notice I can assign a name to my index here. So it's the when page, basically. So my home page is when, and it's called when is it, basically, is in my nav. Notice as I roll over it here, or if I look at it here in my page title, it's called index.html, but I can give it a friendly name. So I'm going to go ahead and come back to my Muse site and double click on home, and I'm going to go ahead and define that as when is it. A cute little question mark. So things that Muse has to deal with on the web, I just get to type it in and not worry too much about it. Now, if I did want to come in and add the Altura Picnic 2016, I can come in and within Muse, come into that master page. If I right click on it and bring up page properties, I can put that, it's not a prefix, a postfix. If I click on, there's probably the answer to that, metadata here, I guess it's a suffix. So page title suffix. I'm going to hit the space bar, then I'm going to hit the shift key and a key I don't even know what it's called, but it does a thick bar. Hit the space bar and just call it Altura Events. And then I'll click OK. So that is going to append that suffix to any page name that I see here on my site or in my site plan. So we've got when is it. I'm going to add another page for what's on. So to do that, I can, you'll notice here in the site plan, I can hit the plus button and add a page in any side of this site plan. I'm going to click to the right, and I'm going to remember what that said, what's on, and I'll double click there. Where is it? And then RSVP. So I'm going to do that twice again, twice more. Where is it? Lots of questions here. And RSVP. All right, so I've gone in and done that basic work. As I mentioned, they all are inheriting a master page that's here at the bottom. And if as I'm working, I change my mind, it's okay. I can press and drag a page to move it to a new location. I can create parent-child pages, so I can actually have this be a child page of the parent. I'm going to hit Command or Control minus to zoom out so I can see these pages a little bit more as it gets more complex, but I can work with that layout. Now, the secret here is when I generate a menu, one of the first really friendly things that Muse does for you is it keeps track of the site plan, and it's going to adjust my dynamic menu as I work to take care of any changes in my site plan. So I want to go ahead and just start to get some of this content in place. And I want to first think about what's going to be common across the entire site. So actually, we're going to jump into that master page, but I'm going to stop for a second and see if I can answer some of the questions that have come up in the Facebook Live session here. All right. I might be looking at the wrong Facebook Live session. Let me see. It's hard. I know. I did get an offer to be, someone offered to be my assistant because I claimed I needed one last time we did this jam session. Sadly, I have to do this alone. Okay. I'm not seeing it quite yet, so throw your comments in chat. I will come back if I can. Towards the end, I got to keep going through this. If you do put something in chat, I can reply to you via Facebook if I can't reply to you live now. All right, people, let's keep going. So what I want to do is look at what's going to be common across the entire site, my navigation, these main elements. So I've got my logo that's here. I've got a header area that's got this nice shadow. If I jump between pages, that navigation is persistent. I also look at the footer area, this badly cropped piece of grass here, and the copyright notice and made with Muse. So these are common elements that I want to put on my master page so that they reoccur across all of the pages. I'm going to jump over into Muse, and I'm going to double click on the master page. Now, we're not going to get to be extraordinarily pretty in this website that we're working on today. I'm going to try to get some functionality in, but I'm definitely going to fall short on some of the fit and finish, as a real designer would call it. I want to use some guides here. So I'm going to pull that under view, and I want to show my guides. And I also want to show edges. This will allow me to see the construct of the site. What you'll notice is any one page, it's a little bit like a Microsoft Word document. There's a header area and a footer area that I can isolate to put footer content. When I apply this master to a page, the page content is going to fit between this header area here and this footer area. So that's the active page content. Now, Muse is rather magical in that you define the width of a website, but the height of a web page is going to be defined based on the actual page content. So I want to go ahead and give myself a little more space here. I'm going to drag the bottom of the browser and then bottom of the page. If you're curious about this, there's definitely some in-app help content that can step you through each of these elements. Basically, this is my footer content, and this will be my active page content. I want to come in and start to emulate some of the elements that are here. Now, to make my work a little easier, I've gone off and created a Creative Cloud library. And in the library, I have all sorts of content from other Adobe applications, even content from Adobe Muse that I used on the project. So you'll notice here in the Creative Cloud library, over towards the right, there's an indicator telling me the source application that created that particular element. So lots of this content is something known as scalable vector content or drawing illustration content from Adobe Illustrator. When you're in Illustrator, if you copy and paste over to Muse, or if you drag between applications, or you simply drag content into Illustrator, it's going to save it on that clipboard as something known as SVG, or Scalable Vector Graphics. This is very good news for the web. It allows you to have resolution-independent content that's going to load very, very quickly at the resolution of the device that it's being viewed on. So if I come in and just grab a desktop icon here and drop it on the page, when I first do so, it may look a little fuzzy for a second. As I press and drag this, it may look a little fuzzy for a second because we're using something known as a poster image. It's kind of for position only, just to let you know what's going on. When I release, though, there's a funny little load icon there for a second. That's because Muse is grabbing the scalable vector graphic content and rendering it on the page. So no matter how large I scale this, it's going to be resolution appropriate for that size for that device. If I'm working on a Retina display or a high DPI device, it's going to res that up appropriate for it here. Looks like it's thinking a little harder this time for that version of the file. I'm going to go ahead and delete it because it's not specific to what we're doing, but I want to come in and just start with some of these top elements. So the first thing I want to do is come in and draw a container, and I'm just going to press and drag the container roughly to about where I have that header area set. The next thing I want to do is make sure that this container is going to span the width of the browser, no matter how wide that browser is. And the way I'll do that is with the item selected here, I can come over to my control panel. This is a context-specific control panel. So things up here will change based on what I'm doing on the canvas. If I'm looking for something and I can't find it, it's all in a panel that's either here or under the window drop-down, all of the panels. But this is kind of a nice context-specific set of controls. With the object still selected, I want to come on into the resize area. This is where you're going to set the resize behavior as you define multiple breakpoints for your object. So in the resize drop-down, I'm going to go ahead and select stretch to browser width. It's going to span the full width of the browser no matter what I define. And I'll come in and I think I'm going to go ahead and give this a fill color of white so that if, for example, I have a background image, it will lay on top of that background image and give me white for my navigation. Next thing I want to do is come in and grab the logo. So I'm just going to type logo in the CC library panel. And in the drop-down, you'll notice I can search across all libraries if I'm looking for logos in lots of projects that I've worked on. It'll search Adobe Stock, which is a paid subscription to stock imagery. There's vector content there, or just search the current library. I'll stick with this Altura library I've created, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the logo, press and drag that onto the canvas. Now, as I place it, I can either click and release to place it at actual size. In the world of SVG, that doesn't matter as much because, as we know, it's resolution independent. I'll come up here and I'm just going to press and drag until that logo is looking a little less insanely big. I'm going to type V on the keyboard to change to a pointer, and I'll just move that into position. Now, as we go along, I'm thinking about the responsive design features because I've done this before. For this logo, no matter what, I want it to stay in the upper left-hand corner of the site throughout the site. So with it selected, I'm going to come back to that resize area, and to the left of it, I can pin content to certain locations. I want to pin it to the upper left-hand corner of the site. And for that bar that I decided to span the width of the site, I'm going to go ahead and pin it to the center of the site. Because it's full width, it doesn't matter if it's upper left, center, or right. It's going to stay to the top, and it's going to stay full width. All right, next thing I want to do is bring in some navigation. Now, I talked about the fact that when I set up my site plan and named those pages, I can come in and use a widget for that purpose to give me navigation. So to do that, I'm going to come over into the widgets library and open that up. And there's a stock set of widgets that we deliver out of the box. If you want more widgets, what you can do is come on in, and depending on where you are here, you'll see a link here that says find more widgets online that takes you to the widget directory that I showed you earlier. For now, I'm going to use the stock menu widget, the horizontal one, and I'm going to press and drag that onto the canvas. Now, one of our evangelists, Terry White, you may know him, he's a big photography guy. He said that the Muse team makes the stock widgets so incredibly ugly, you're forced to have to design them. He's pretty much right. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of any styling that I have here. And to do that, I'm going to right-click and go ahead and clear all styling. Now, before I do it, let me just explain a little bit of what we offer. What we're trying to do, in addition to being very unattractive, is let you understand how states or how objects within a widget work. So if I zoom in on this, the first thing you'll notice is that it tells me all the names of the pages I defined on my master page. The second thing you'll notice is if I bring up the states panel, I like to tear this guy off and kind of let it float around on the screen because it's kind of a persistent thing. It changes based on what I have selected. The first time I click on this object, what you'll notice is that every object within Muse can have up to 4 states. Actually, contact forms have multiple states beyond that, submission states. But this object, this is something that you may have noticed on the web that's just true, which is you can give indicators to viewers of your website about how the navigation of that site is going by defining states to objects. So notice that I've got the normal state. If I roll over this button, in essence, the over state is darker, down is even darker than that, and then the active state has an even different shade. So I can define a different look for each of the states of this object. I'm going to come in, as I mentioned, right-click on it and clear all the default styling. From there, I can select the object, and as I'm working, I can come in and type T on the keyboard or go to the text tool here, and then decide which typeface I'd like to use for this menu. Now, out of the box, this menu is going to be linked to all of the pages that we have. I am going to cheat a little bit in the spirit of attractiveness, and I'm going to pull out a version of the same menu that I've already applied some states and fonts to. So I'm going to delete it on the canvas, now that we put it there. And I'm going to come over to CC Libraries, and I'm going to just type in menu. I've got the nav desktop menu. So I'm going to press and drag that onto the canvas. And I'll let it go. And if we look at this object, let's go back to that states panel. When I click on it, it's one of the other key learnings with Muse widgets. We're working on a way to actually improve this so it's a little less confusing, but you have to really know where you are in the selection state of the site. So notice I've got nothing on the canvas clicked at the moment, and I'm at a page level with no states. If I click once, I can select the menu, and I see that. I still don't see states, though. If I click a second time, it's tunneling in and taking me to the individual menu item. With that menu item selected, I can see there's a normal rollover, so the font changes from black to white. The background color changes to a transparent blue. Mouse down is the same. Notice that that doesn't change. I can choose that. And then active is the darkest shade of blue. So really simple changes that have happened. One of the other really terrific parts about Muse is if you drag something from a library that has text styling, paragraph styling, or color swatches that you're using, you can retain those and apply them to a new project just by dragging an object out of your CC library onto the canvas. So I'm going to go to my fill drop down here. I'm going to actually click off before I do that. And in the fill drop down, I want to just right click and select delete all unused. Notice kind of something magical just happened where the colors that were used in this menu, that shade of blue that's at different tints, black, gray, and white, really rich color palette at the moment, but they're now part of this project. Another thing I want to mention is if I come on into this object and go to paragraph styles, it looks like I haven't done anything about paragraph styles. I could decide that the font that's being used is a style that I'd like to use over time. So I'm going to come on in and hit escape once to level up for a moment. And I'm going to hit in again. This is the tunneling. So if you double click and it takes you into elements, you can then hit escape to back out of those elements. I'm going to type T on the keyboard. There we go. I'm at a text label level now. And if I type T here, I can see it's using Ephra Light. So that's the font that was defined in the library. I want to reuse that font again. So with the object selected, I'm going to come to the paragraph styles. And let's see if this wants to cooperate with me. It's kind of funny. This guy here, it's being a little funny to me, so I'm not going to save it as a style. But if I did want to come in and do that, let's come in. I'll be a little lazy about it. When is it? And I know I want to use that Ephra Light font. So I'll come on in and select Ephra Light. Now Muse supports thousands of typefaces that are included as part of your Creative Cloud license with Typekit. So as you work, you can go and select fonts from that foundry by pulling down on File to add and remove web fonts. I encourage you to explore there. It's pretty amazing. The fonts that you use in your website will install within Muse from the Typekit server, be associated with the project. So if I sent you this file, when you opened it up, any fonts I'm using are going to appear there. And they'll be available for you as you design out the site. And when you publish that site live, Typekit makes sure that it minimizes the amount of fonts that are uploaded with the site so that they load very quickly and consistently across devices. All right, I can't just keep jabbering on. We got a lot of site designing to do here. So I'm going to click over there on a paragraph style, and I'm just going to call this body text. You'll notice that I can come in and define something known as P tags or H1 values. This is important for search engine optimization. This allows a search engine like Google search or Bing to come in and know what's the most important content on the page. Chances are my body text is not going to be something so important I want a search engine to pick up on it. So I'm going to give it what's known as a P tag or a paragraph tag and click OK. I can delete that now, and that style is going to remain there for me. I'm going to press and drag, hit Command minus or Control minus to see where the heck I am here. Notice that this menu, when I dragged it out, it's already pinned appropriately. I can see that with these dotted lines, but it's pinned to the upper right-hand corner of the site. So I can press and drag this guy over here. And without really taking any more time, if I want to go back to my site plan, let's switch back over there. Some magic has happened, ideally. Let's see if it's happening. If I pull down under File now to preview the site, the entire site in the browser, what Muse does is it'll take my primary browser that I use for my machine. So for me, I've defined Chrome as my main browser, and it's going to render all of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for the site here in the browser. So notice I can roll over my navigation here. There's the name of my site, or my page, when is it, Altura Events. I can click over to where is it, maybe. It's interesting. It's being a little dopey on me here. You know, you can use Muse for a long time and not really see everything. I'm going to jump back out and see why this is being silly. Let's go back over here. I'm on my master page, and I have a dynamic menu. You know what? Maybe this guy is not dynamic. I'm going to go to the flyout. All right, there's where the magic isn't happening. So one thing I didn't mention is that widgets are configurable and stylable. You can make them look like your site. I've shown you that already. But you can also make them have certain options based on what you want to do. This menu is being built manually, interestingly enough. Not sure why, but if I click on it, I get this nice little blue flyout, and this allows me to configure different options for a widget. And notice in the menu type, it's set to manual. This isn't going to change much, but when I switch it to top level pages, it will actually take the pages from my site plan and use them in the menu. Let me prove that to you. Notice it says when, what, where, RSVP. If I jump back out to my site plan and I suddenly decide that where should be all the way on the right, and then I go into one of those pages, notice that where is now on the far right-hand side. If I now pull down on file to preview the site in the browser, it's going to render all of the pages, all of the content that's there on my own machine. So if I don't want to share this with anyone, I don't have to publish it really. It's just running on my local host, my local machine. That's my local IP address. And I now have the actual pages. So I can roll over RSVP, click it, and it's going to show up there. Okay, we got some basics in place, and we're sadly behind in our work. I'm going to do just a little tricky thing here. Draw a silly little rectangle, make it stretch to browser width, do a really bad job of a gradient fill. I'm going to do it vertically from, oh, that's terrible, black to nothing. And come on, Dani. You going to listen to me? How about black to black? And we'll do it from, 30% to 0%. I know it's bad, but let's try 15. Okay, so I have a snaky little shadow there that gives you this sense of depth now. I'm going to select everything I've put on the page and make sure, actually, just click on here, make sure each individual item is pinned to the top. My menu is behaving as well, maybe. I'm on the wrong page, so I'm going to delete that, cut it. I'm going to go back to my site plan and come back into my master where it belongs. Now when I paste, I can just paste what I put on the clipboard. I can paste it in place. That's going to make sure it's exactly the same place I had it before. And now when I go back to my site plan, I can hit Command or Control M. Takes me quickly to that site plan. I've got the header. Phew, I know, and not a whole ton of time left. I know, people. Like I said, I think I should do the 2-hour Muse 101 session. But let's go ahead and start to build out some additional content. I'm going to go to the When Is It page, and I want to have that nice large image in the background here. So if I go back to my goal again, notice that I've got an image in the background, and it's considered a full browser width image. So it's going to scale to fill the container. It's aligning from the left because I wanted to keep my little hat and basket going on there. So I'm going to come here under Browser Fill, and I'll click on it, and I'm just going to go browse for that image. So I've got this landing that I was playing with a little bit this morning. That's my image. I'll double click to select it. And I want to align it to the left-hand side. Whoa, that looks very large. We're not going to tile it. We're going to say Scale to Fill. So it will fill that container. And okay, moving right along. The other thing I'm going to do, and this can be a little confusing because I'm talking to myself here, is if there is a website that already has the content or a Word document, I'm just going to copy the text rather than type it out. So I'm going to kind of press and drag here, right click and copy it onto my clipboard. This could be from any application. Come on in and paste it here. And I'm just going to do some quick type settings. So type T on the keyboard to bring up my text tools. I'll center it. I'll select it all, and I'm going to go to that paragraph style, and I'll at least start with the body text setting there. Notice it undid the alignment because that other content wasn't centered aligned. And I can now visually design what I'm working on. So this first bit is kind of a heading. I'm going to grow this container a little wider. I hit the Option key, which allows me to resize in both directions. I'm going to take my center text here and just do some quick typesetting. I might want to come in and change the weight of that font. It is true that the more weights you use is going to make your site a little more weighty, but for the most part, I haven't seen much speed hits with the use. If you want to see crazy typography, go to Moments. I'm going to show you this. So momentswithtypography.com. This is a site that is built in Muse that has over 150 families and 65 different weights of fonts, all loaded in the site. Actually, I'm lying. Go to Sessions. Sessions with Typography. And that is another example of typography. All Typekit fonts loading very, very quickly in the browser. So performance, I think, is not much of an issue. But my performance with the time we have is going to become an issue. All right, my landing page is in pretty good shape. I can come in and add those widgets, the countdown widget. I'm going to leave it for now and just go get a little bit more page content on here so I feel like we got a little bit further. So for the What's On page, there's some text that we know we want to pull in. So we'll go to the What's On section. And, you know, again, I'm going to just copy and paste text. I'll come in, if I don't do it the right way here, come in and just select that headline, copy it. And I'm going to come and just paste it here. Now I am going to kind of start to build out my work just to show you how styles work. I went in and set some larger text here and then kind of a headline a bit. I may want to use that again. It's a little on the big side, but notice that I've started with a style body text. It's got a plus that indicates, as you'll notice on the rollover, I made the size bigger, I aligned it to the center, and I actually changed the font. So I'm going to create a different paragraph style based on the changes that I made. I can just come in and add a new style, and we'll call this subhead. And now I want to make sure that the tag reflects the fact that it's going to be a subhead. I'll give it an H2 value here and click OK. Now if I go back to that second page and want to carry that over, as I mentioned, it's a little big, but it's good enough for now. I can apply that subhead style there. Now the beauty is if I come to my senses and realize that's insanely big for a web page, I can come and change it once and it's going to change all instances throughout the site because I went in and saved it as a style. That's the beauty of styles. Let's come in and grab some text here. I'm just going to copy it, swing it over here. I'm going to grab additional text, copy, paste it over there. Now there are some nice controls as you're working with Muse. There's some keyboard commands that I tend to like. I can come into both these objects and go to the transform panel, make sure that the width is the same. They're both 200, that's great. I can make them the same height as well, but that will dynamically happen. With the two objects selected, if I hold, let's see, the Option key, no, don't do that. It always takes me a minute here. Command key, I can, no, we're not going to get into it for now, but there are some control keyboard commands that you can use. I'm going to select the two objects, and notice that there are some interesting handles here. Each individual container has squares, right? If I select a group, there are diamonds, and a diamond indicates a control point that's going to apply to the entire group. So I'm going to go ahead and select the triangle there, and that'll grow both of those objects at the same time. With them selected in paragraph styles, I'm going to go ahead and set body text. All right, I'm going to make you a deal. We're halfway through building this site, and it's not fair. So I don't know what I'm going to do for my jam session in 2 weeks. What I'd like to do is pick up where I'm leaving off now. I want to take some questions for the last 5 minutes, and I'm going to stop this work. And jam session number 2 is going to be Muse 101 Part 2. So we're going to continue at a reasonable pace now that we set some of the foundation for the site here. So I'm going to stop, take a look at some questions, and hopefully you'll come back in 2 weeks. You're always welcome to, as I mentioned, go to Facebook Live or the Facebook video section or YouTube and just skim through the next hour of my work. So I will pull down on file and save this site so that we can pick it up. This is going to be Muse 101, Altura, Part 1. Okay, I'm going to start with chat here in Zoom. Kristen mentioned that she had an issue with the menu. You're going to send me that if you'd like. Send me a link to the site. You can send it to Dani@adobe.com. Let's see what else. Okay, everybody's looking good there. I'm going to go to Facebook Live and see what we've got for any comments. Hopefully you guys have been kind there. This is where you go to your own Facebook page for a second, and it can be very scary. You never know what's going to pop up. See if I can catch this live feed. Okay. We do have some comments here, so let's see what we've got going on. Not too bad, folks. You've been a little quiet. So I don't feel as bad. We've definitely had lots of folks watching, but quietly. So come join me again, 2 weeks, same time, same place, and we'll pick up on part 2 of the site. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and we'll see you soon.